Well, here's another one. Swoon Theory. This is known as Swoon Theory, and you almost never hear of that word swoon other than like in use with this theory. It's interesting. Uh, this Swoon Theory, it means that Jesus, uh, actually, yeah. So he was crucified, according to this. He was crucified, but he survived. Okay. Now, um, so this one supposes that he was put through all the torture, the Roman torture, crucifixion, including being crucified, but being flogged, and that he, uh, yeah, I believe in the swoon theory. Everything else is unscientific. I like that. I like your courage to say that, honestly, because I think it's unmedical to believe in the swoon theory. Here's why. Um, Jesus was brutally crucified. The Romans were expert executioners. They knew how to kill people. Okay. We know that he was already dead when they pierced his heart. Remember that, well, first of all, even before that, they did not break his legs. This was a prophecy in the Old Testament, and it came true during the gospel accounts. They did not break his legs. They broke the legs of the other thieves on either side of him, did not break Jesus's legs. Why? Well, because when you were crucified, you don't die from the pain. I mean, you could go into shock and so on, but you die from asphyxiation. You are hanging there and you're being asphyxiated and you're supposed to push yourself up. Of course, that puts incredible pain and strain on, if your feet are nailed there. So it puts incredible pain on that bone in the foot. I've actually got I've got a larger one of these too, but this is a rosary here. It was incredibly bloody and incredibly embarrassing and disrespectful, let's say. This is, in fact, very rare cases. You could see Jesus be not have any clothes on at all. It would have been, disrespectful, even this little clothes. But there are some accounts that he didn't have anything on at all, according to the way the Romans say it. And so I like this. You say back in the account, to be honest, none of us were there. We don't know how bad he was crucified. True, right? But we have historical accounts of other crucifixions by the Romans in this area and all around their empire during this time period. So we know exactly detailed accounts of how people were crucified. And they're corroborated by the gospel accounts. So the failure to break the legs means that they didn't have to break the legs. This would have been pointless because he was already dead. He had already been asphyxiated. The reason why they broke the legs so that you couldn't push up, and so that when your legs were broken, you would fall, you would be suffocated to death. And then after that, as I began with, but I'll say now, they pierced his heart. How do we know this? Because when the spear went into his side, both blood and water gushed out. That means that you can look at the medical text on this. Any medical person understands that means that severe trauma had happened to the heart. It had almost literally speaking, burst. And so you had this collection of water around the heart muscle, and that is what flowed after being pierced. So, so he was certainly dead. Here's the thing, too. Suppose he did swoon. Suppose he did just, let's say, swoon in the sense of faint, right? Suppose he did just faint and they put him in the burial clothes. First of all, they wrapped him completely. Now, people have been mistaken to be buried alive, sure. Well, he was said to also have appeared to the apostles. And they, again, as I said before, this will be a constant theme. From the inspiration of that appearance, they go on, they evangelize all of the known world, and each one of them, except for John, die a horrible martyrdom. Even Bartholomew, gosh, he was said to be flayed alive, like his skin peeled off. Saint Peter was crucified upside down. Saint Andrew was crucified. You had people who were beheaded. I think Paul and Peter were both beheaded. They go to their death knowing this. And in this case, why did they do all that? Why did they do this? They would have, so the idea here is They were so enlivened and invigorated and inspired by the appearance of seeing Jesus. How, this is the thing, how could they have been so inspired if they just saw just a half-dead man walk in who had just fainted off the cross, barely made it out alive? I mean, he was brutally beaten. Um, and there's a couple of other points. First of all, how did he roll away the stone if he's half dead? Like, he just barely escapes death. How did he roll away the stone? This is, who knows how many pounds, but it's made of solid stone. How, in rolling away the stone, did he not alert any of the guards? You have to also understand that Romans would have been executed if they let we know this from historical sources, from contemporary historical sources. You would be executed if you let a prisoner escape, especially a capital punishment prisoner, like somebody who was going to be put to death. You'd be executed on the spot. So the fact that, supposing it just strains all credibility again. Thanks, Victoria. I'm glad you were here. Take care. Let me look in the chat again. Yeah, that's a great point, Chelsea. Rome did not allow crucifixion for its own citizens because they consider it way beneath them, very undignified, very grotesque, very gruesome, very horrible way to die. This was only a death meant for criminals, and Romans were very good at killing. They were trained killers. Their executioners were anyway. That's what the job of an executioner is. And if they let somebody escape, and then not only that, but they had posted guards, remember, at the request of, I don't remember if it was Pilate or the Jewish authorities, but both sides had a vested interest in guaranteeing that disciples didn't come and steal his body, which that gets to the next one. Who does he appear to first, the women or disciples? That's a really good question, but I'll save that one. So let's continue here. Okay, so the next theory is that suppose Jesus died, and these are actually, and I think you can tell just by the volume of these, that I'd have to look at the numbers of academics who don't believe that Jesus was actually killed. I don't think it's very many. The swoon theory is actually very easily handled with, because if you just look at the medical, in fact, there is, in fact, I'll share this really very quick. I know this might rile some people's feathers, but I like it. There's a book very popular called The Case for Christ. And I like this because, so it's under this sort of pretense that there's this atheist journalist, lawyer, who is investigating the claims of Christ as being God, as having resurrected. And so it's all relevant to the stuff we're discussing right here. He doesn't just do it his own. He writes the thing, of course, but he does so by interviewing many, many experts. Like each chapter, there's a new expert. So each chapter, different topic. So it'd be on like New Testament criticism, he'd go to Ben Witherington III over in Kentucky. If it's on, I don't know, New Testament canon and how that formed, he'd go to Bruce Metzger in Illinois, I think he was. And if there's anything medical with respect to the swoon theory or the resurrection, well, not the resurrection, but the swoon theory and the crucifixion, like, was Jesus really dead? There's an entire chapter on that. I encourage you to go look at it. And it details, based on the sources that we have, not only in the Gospels, in Jesus' particular case, minor details like they didn't break his legs, but also details in terms of historical contemporary examples, the fact that Jesus could not have survived, just could not. So I encourage you to go look at that. I forget what chapter number it is, but it's in there.